And the karma sannyasa yoga here. So he mentioned how, starting from shloka 17, it was mentioned. How does one stabilize oneself in the supreme truth, in the highest truth? Because all our life, everything we experience at the worldly level is subject to these ups and downs. So then how do we establish ourselves? Because the nature of the world is like that. One day there is happiness, one day there is sorrow. So by establishing in this truth, that goal, that supreme goal, gachanti punaravritti, jnana nirduta kalmashaha. So all those sorrows, all those challenges of our life, they will be dispelled, or we will not have to come back again. And then the state, it was mentioned starting with mantra 18, of a person who has equal vision, samadarshina. So the person who is endowed with wisdom, but with humility, not just like knowledge, where it creates a sense of superiority, separation, by knowledge that is able to see that one reality in everything, right from a superior person to a very poor kind of a person in terms of is a sinful person also. We are able to see that tattva. But of course, you discussed not necessarily that we have to, in our vyavahara, we have to be mindful of how we interact and whom we associate with. Then it was mentioned that the one who is established in that state of equal vision, he is established in that Brahman. So Brahmavid, Brahmani sthitaha, that was mentioned in the shloka 20. So how do you establish in that Brahma sthiti, that state of Brahma? So then it was mentioned sthira buddhi asammuda. There is a person whose intellect is sthira, meaning stable. His intellect is not wavering. Only such a person is not deluded. So we have discussed this thing. So in the early chapter, the name, what was the name of previous chapter? Anybody?
Sthita prajna.
No, previous chapter. What was that
Okay.
previous chapter's name? Uh,
Jnana karma sannyasa yoga.
Jnana karma sannyasa yoga. So yeah, actually, yeah, the state of mind we discussed. The state of mind is sthita prajna. A person whose intellect is sthira. His intellect is. So how is that person's intellect sthira? Because yeah, why is it? Because he has reached that state of sthita prajna. The person who has attained that state of sthita prajna, he has attained that jnana. And through jnana, what happens? There is jnana karma sannyasa yoga. So when we say jnana karma sannyasa yoga, he's free from what? So that state of sthita prajna is what? He's free from that ups and downs. There is no, extreme raga dvesha. There is no the happiness and sorrows of dukkeshu anudigna manaha. Sukeshu vigata spruhaha. In that unhappiness, he is not dejected. Meaning, if something is lost, he is not dejected. In that gains or some positive event of life, he is not overelated. That is a sthita prajna. So, such a person, how does he attain karma sannyasa yoga? That was mentioned in the jnana karma sannyasa yoga. The person who's already done that. So, what is the main quality a person achieves when he attains to karma sannyasa yoga? What falls away or what is gone from him?
The sense of doer-ship.
Very good. Yeah. Sense of doer-ship. The kartrutva is gone. So when the person is established in jnana karma sannyasa yoga, through wisdom, he realizes that I am not the doer. So once that sense of doership is gone, now he's actually reverting here to some teachings of samatva, practicing samatva. So practicing samatva is not for somebody who is already free from doership. Why is that person who is already free from doership doesn't have to practice samatva? Mainly because that person is already, that knowledge has freed him from the doership. So there is no raga dvesha towards objects anymore for that person. So then for what kind of a yogi or what kind of a sadhaka, samatva is necessary? Is it for a jnani or who is it for?
Samatvam is for everyone.
Everyone meaning who? In the Bhagavad Gita.
Karma yogi.
Karma yogi. For a karma yogi, mostly. Why? Because karma yogi is the one. I mean, everybody is a karma yogi, as you said. Like you say, everybody, but everybody means not a person who doesn't have this intention, this wisdom, this thing. That person is not even a karma yogi. He's just what we call as a karma bhogi. Or a bhogi, meaning he wants whatever he wants to enjoy from that. A karma yogi is what the difference. Karma yogi is relinquishing the results of all actions and also the doership eventually. So that is the difference between a normal person and a karma yogi. But a difference between a karma yogi and jnani is what? A jnani doesn't have to practice samatva anymore because that doership has fallen already. So the state, what it is mentioned here, this mantra, when it was mentioned, mantra number 20, so we can look at it. Okay, so this mantra we were looking at, na prahrushyet priyam prapya, no dvijet prapya cha priyam. See, this person is free from what? He is free from that attachment to pleasant things and aversion to unpleasant things. So that is the first condition. Now, this is a practice for a karma yogi, and this is a state of one who is a karma sannyasa yogi through jnana, meaning a jnani, a person who is a jnani or a sthita prajna. This is the state of that person. And for a karma yogi, this is a practice. Practice means in our daily life, we are trying to free ourselves from the state of attachment to things I like and aversion to things I don't like. So once that has happened, what is the goal of that? We are trying to get to sthira buddhi. Sthira buddhi is a very important practice for everybody in the world. You want to be successful in the world in anything, whether you take our career or some kind of a interaction, people interaction also, relationships. See, all these things, if you are not sthira, if you are not stable, then what happens? One day you have good thoughts, this job is good or this person is good. Then the other day you say, no, this person is not good. This job I don't like. So that is what. See, these are the two things in the antakarana. There is always these two competing factors that is happening in us, which is called sankalpa vikalpa. So the buddhi, when the buddhi is decisive, a person who is a warrior, he goes to the battle and he says, even if I die, I will fight. That is a sthira buddhi. He doesn't step back because he says, this is, I'm doing this for the country or whatever it is. Sthira buddhi is decisive. Similarly, a sadhaka is like that. That sthira has come, the mind is decisive. Now, why is it that again, once that is sthira, for when and what are the factors that the mind doesn't stay stable, doesn't stay sthira? What in our antakarana causes this ups and downs? Anybody?
attachments to things.
Attachment to things. That is one factor. Where does it come from? How does, from which factor does this come from, all these changes?
Kleshas.
Kleshas. Kleshas. So, and also see these are the two factors of our antakarana. One is the buddhi is trying to decide in a way which is good for us. See, everybody has a sense what is good. So they decide based on what knowledge they have, and they decide that this is what I should do. So the buddhi makes a decision, or out of some reason it will make some decision. Then the mind has an aspect to play where the mind destabilizes that. So this is what we call manas and buddhi. So in the buddhi is that stability based on the wisdom you have. It may not always be the wisdom of scriptures like Gita and all that, even worldly wisdom. So some people, they will say that, I will serve the country for my life, or I will work for this organization or this non-profit or some work, and they will be stable in that. They will say, for my life, I will do this. So that is sthira buddhi. Now, there will be changes, there will be temptations. Where is this coming from? So this is coming from what we call the manas and chitta also. So in this manas is that, what is manas doing? Manas is based on these vrittis. There are constant flux of thoughts that are constantly coming. Some are supporting this decision you made. Some are trying to pull the rug under this decision you made. This is called sankalpa vikalpatmaka manaha. The nature of mind is like every day something will come and test you. It will say this decision is not good. Like you decide I will study Gita for whatever time it takes. Then sometime you'll say, okay, what is this Gita? I can study. I can get maybe I can get a summary. Somebody was telling me recently, Swamiji, your video, I can get summary somewhere. So okay, then why should I listen? I don't have to spend time. So then what is happening? That mind slowly starts finding the easy way, the shorter way. This is the nature of the mind. Why is this coming? Because in the mind, as somebody was mentioned, the chitta, there is another aspect of antakarana called chitta. Here is told all these kleshas. These are all these kleshas starting from raga dvesha, but we also say other things like kama krodha lobha moda moha mada matsarya, and all these kleshas. These are our conditioned patterns, all right from likes and dislikes in a broad way, but in a much more subtle way. It is asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So all these are constantly battling against anything that you decide and against anything that you want to make progress. So this buddhi is not able to be stable. This buddhi is not able to completely abide in what it has resolved. So now when we come to this aspect of what we call like adhyatma or the self progress or the spiritual path, then there are two ways of stabilizing this. In Karma Yoga, what are two ways? One is through this Karma Yoga, or what is more known as Bhakti, Shraddha. We surrender completely to Bhagavan, meaning we have that Shraddha that I want the highest progress, I want the highest realization, uncompromisingly in this very life. So then what happens? I take the refuge of Bhagavan or my Ishta or whatever it is, not as the goal itself. In the Vedantic thing, it is not like the getting Bhagwan for Bhagwan's sake only. Like how in Bhakti Marga we want to be always with Bhagavan. That's why we are worshipping. Here we are worshipping for the sake of truth, for the sake of ultimate realization. But here also you need Bhagavan because Bhagavan is the means to help us through this process. So it becomes sthira. Other process in becoming sthira is constant hammering of knowledge, wisdom. So continually contemplating on wisdom, continuously, using that wisdom. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. Hmm. You can use the path of karma yoga / bhakti yoga, or and the path of jnana yoga with the karma yoga as supportive. So both of these are the ways where the intellect slowly starts becoming sthira. Sthira means stable, unwavering, decisive. See, this realization which we get maybe in a class or when we read something inspiring, it is an insight that will last for a while. And that insight will again go away. Just like how, somebody who has some habits, he'll get some insight. Then at the time when that habits come, that insight is gone because that klesha, that power of all the samskaras will overtake that. It will say, that can wait. That so here is where that complete arpana, complete mind is resolved in wisdom or in Bhagavan, in an unrelenting, in an uncompromising way. Then what happens? It is just like how a warrior is so determined to fight for his country even at the cost of his life. That is what a sadhaka is really called for. A sadhaka's buddhi has to be so sthira that resolve that he makes, that sankalpa. See, even in the process of making sankalpa in our traditions is what? You're not just making sankalpa like, okay, I resolve that I will wake up from 5 o'clock from tomorrow. That kind of sankalpa is based on only as much as your determination, your own self-determination is. Here you are making sankalpa and offering it to Bhagavan, because through Bhagavan's help, to Guru, grace and all that, that sankalpa gets purified and it gets strengthened. So that determined sankalpa, which is not just of one vyasti buddhi, it is not the sankalpa of a one limited intellect. This sankalpa becomes a sankalpa of the samasti, because you have offered it to Bhagavan. You have taken the ground. That support is what? That support is that ground which is never going to shake. That is the samasti or the Bhagavan's ground. So I wanted to dwell on this mainly because this is a main transformation that we are looking for in our life. And so in the Gita, unlike Upanishads and other texts, in Gita, what is it? There is a two-pronged approach. In Gita, it is not just like how, like we just think about knowledge and we contemplate, we listen, then we hope that eventually it will change. Here you are also standing on the ground of sadhana. What is a sadhana? The sadhana is for making that intellect stable or sthira. And that happens when there is purity, that is shraddha, there is that atma, that chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddhi is what ultimately, if you boil down, chitta shuddhi is being free from all these kleshas, raga, dvesha. So that is, I mean, of course, we talk about chitta shuddhi in the context of also that it has that viveka, vairagya and all that, shat sampati and all that, mumukshutva. But most important thing is when the kleshas are no longer bothering that intellect, then that intellect will not be shaken easily. If at every fleeting thought can easily disturb you in something you like, you resolve that I will not have some kind of a sweet for next 10 days. Sometimes Navratri and all, people do these kind of things. I will not have 9 days any sweets. But the first day you go, you pass somewhere, you're passing by a shop, and you see some kind of a seemingly, it starts with a seemingly harmless sweet. And then the first thought that comes, if the klesha is there, what happens? You will say, oh, this is not pure sugar, this is made of jaggery, honey. It's okay, I can have this. Then slowly what happens? That same thing will come next day. And it will say, yesterday you already have that honey jaggery thing. You may as well have the sweet today. So then where is that coming from? So that klesha accumulates. It becomes powerful, powerful, powerful. Then it will dislodge the buddhi. So this is the fundamental teaching in Gita, that jnana is mentioned again and again. See, every few phrases we will see jnana, some knowledge, some high path, something where he says, Brahma with Brahma Sita, the one who realizes Brahman is stable in Brahman. Then he should have stopped there. But then he talks again, he says, be free from raga dvesha. Keep your senses in control. Bring your sadhana, the karma yoga, bhakti yoga. So this is a two-pronged approach. Is going to come. Okay, so we will now look at these shlokas. So let us look at again from this shloka itself, shloka number 20. So please, you may all repeat after me. Let us chant these shlokas. Na praharshyet priyam prapya
Na
प्रहर्षेत् प्रियं
prapya
प्राप्य
no dvijet prapya cha priyam
No
no
द्विजित्
vijet
प्राप्य च प्रियं
prapya
tira buddhira sammudho
स्थिरबुद्धिरसम्मूढो
brahmavid brahmani stitah.
ब्रह्मविद् ब्रह्मणि
ब्रह्मविद्ब्रह्मणि स्थितः
Change to this one. Yeah, let's do this now. Bhaya sparsheshvasaktatma
बाह्यस्पर्शेष्वसक्तात्मा
vinyatyatmani yat sukham
विन्द्यत्यात्मनि यत्सुखम्
brahma yoga yuktatma
स ब्रह्मयोगयुक्तात्मा
sukhamakshayamashnuते.
सुखमक्षयमश्नुते
Ye hi samsparshaja bhogha
ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा
dukkayonaya evate
दुःखयोनय एव ते
adyantavantah kaunteya
आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय
na teshu ramate buddhaha
तेषु रमते बुधः
shaknoti hayva yas sodhum
शक्नोत्यैव यस्सोढुम्
praksharira vimokshanat
शरीरविमोक्षणात्
kama krodhodbhavam vegam
कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगम्
sayukta sa sukhi naraha.
युक्तः स सुखी नरः
This. So he's now going to talk about this part of how do you stabilize the intellect? How can the buddhi be stabilized? So here he's now going to come back again to this topic of working with the senses, the mind and all that. Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma. The person who's the external objects, the contact of the mind with the sense objects. So when I see an object, that eyes perceive it, but it is that mind which actually recognizes that, right? So there's a contact internally, the mind contacts through the sense object, through the sense organs with that object. But a person who remains unattached at the level of mind, when the mind contacts, if there is no raga dvesha, if there is no kind of because the buddhi is sthira, the knowledge is sthira, like a jnani, he will not get too much carried away with that. So he remains what is called asaktatma. He remains somewhat detached mentally. Even though the eyes contact. Vindyat atmani yat sukham. Because this person is established in happiness. He's already established in what happiness? He finds the happiness in that self. Sa Brahma Yoga Yuktatma. Now he goes on to say there is a Brahma Yoga Yuktatma, meaning a person who has realized that Atma Tattva, especially that knowledge that Atma is that Brahman, that one's own self is not the body, it's not the mind, but it is a very Brahman. So, Sa Brahma Yoga. So, this is what Brahma Yoga, that the self is identified with that Atma. Yuktatma is that is anchored in that, absorbed in that. Sukamash Makshayamashnute. His joy does not end. He has an everlasting joy. So here we can look at it from two perspectives. One perspective is that the first person, what it is mentioned here, when the person's heart is unattached or the mind is unattached with what the person sees, meaning the sense objects, object of desire or objects of hate, when the person looks at it. If his mind is withdrawn, how will he find happiness? So that here, that happiness that he finds, it is said that he finds the happiness with the self. So this we also know with a lot of people, right? People who are disciplined, people who are not because of any spiritual practices, they have a very good diet, they have a very good, balanced life. They're naturally very balanced. So such people who are already quite balanced, those people also find happiness. What is their happiness or what is the difference in their happiness? Their happiness is coming out of just the sense of discipline, meaning it is not that they are occupied with the objects. Their happiness is coming just by that sense of discipline. So with such people, what we call as these are the people who have chitta shuddhi, meaning they have a certain degree of already purity. They are not swayed, is self-controlled, disciplined by nature. Now he compares that, like so he says asak, the Bhashya it says asaktaha atma antakarana yasya sa ayam asaktatma vishayeshu Priti Varjitaha, meaning he is not attached, he is not drawn. Naturally, they are disciplined. So, this is also what a karma yogi is expected to do. A karma yogi or a person practicing any form of yoga. So, if you all remember, I had mentioned when we say karma yoga, we have to sometimes take all the different forms of yoga practices. Other than jnana, every other kind of practices is included. So these practices require some degree of self-discipline, right? And slowly what happens, the mind is able to withdraw from its obsession with those objects. So such a person, what happens? He experiences ananda, he experiences happiness. But really, where is all this happiness coming from? So this is a very important thing to contemplate when we say happiness. Every pursuit of life's objects, that was happiness we are seeking. So what is this happiness? Are there different happiness? Meaning, like let us say I experience a certain happiness from eating some sweets. And then somebody experienced some happiness from playing some music. And somebody experiences happiness from doing some worship or some meditation. So now you all can tell me what is the difference in all this happiness? Meaning, what is the difference in the essence of all this happiness?
The lasting and not lasting. Short
That is
duration.
correct. Yeah. But is the nature of happiness different?
Can you say?
First one relies on external things, but the meditation relies on internal things.
That is also a good point. Yeah, Varun.
One happiness is more like a gross happiness, looking from objects and external things, as somebody said. One is more like a subtle happiness, getting from charity, worship, meditation.
Right. So that is also a good point. Now, what is when we say happiness as such, right? Is the nature of happiness in essence different? Let us look at that. Like we say external and internal, but the happiness that we experience from anything external or internal, lasting or non-lasting. What is the essence of that happiness? Is it different?
Pleasure leads to
Swamiji.
suffering.
Pleasure leads to?
The instant pleasure leads to dukkha, suffering.
But what about the moment you experience that? Yeah, Murthy ji was saying.
Swamiji, all happiness, I mean, even if I'm momentarily satisfied by an object, say ice cream or something, it actually arises from self only, from Atman. I mean, which we don't realize, but we think the happiness is in the object, but
Yes.
the state of satisfaction, the happiness is from the self.
Yeah, so see, this is an important point. Actually, it is true. We do qualify happiness based on internal, external, lasting, non-lasting, and we also say rajasika sukha, tamasika sukha, and sometimes we qualify like vishayananda, sukshmananda, paramananda. So all these are different ways to categorize happiness. But that essence of that happiness, if you really look at it, happiness is the one thing only. So that is why even in we say happiness in general, right? If we say sometimes everybody is in pursuit of happiness. So that essence of happiness is that happiness of our own sarupa. When you experience from an object, that happiness is felt where? It is felt within ourselves. Even though you say that, that object is giving me happiness, where is it experienced? You're experiencing within. But because it is triggered by that object, it is focused on that object, you experience only in the presence of that object. So that is a Vishayananda, object based. But that object, that happiness is object is outside, but the happiness is experienced within you. So all happiness are like that. It is the only difference is we do say that from the sadhana point of view, that happiness from external objects is not worth seeking. Meaning it is not the happiness that is lasting. And such happiness will give that mind a way of turns the mind constantly outward. So see the when we get any happiness in life, what a jnani does is different. This is what he is saying here. The person, when he touches an object, he will experience happiness. That point, that shloka here, that English meaning only we can see. With the mind detached from external objects, one finds joy in the self. But upon contact with that object, here it is, that is probably not clear in the translation. Bhaya sparsha. Sparsha means contact. When there is a contact of the mind with the object, let us say, I see something and it gives me happiness. Seeing something gives me happiness. Now the eyes contacted that. So the object I saw. But a person who normally experiences, he likes this, he grasps at it, he wants to get more of it. But a person who has true realization or who is a jnani or a yogi, what he is doing is, when he sees this, he's not attached to this, but yet he experiences the happiness and he realizes this happiness is not from within. This happiness is within. This happiness is not without, it is within. So this shift, is becomes the attitude of this person as he goes about in the world. Wherever, whatever he sees and experiences joy, he immediately kind of reverts back and say, this happiness is within me. This happiness is inside me. Or this happiness is me, better still. Swarupananda. So this ability to turn that attention and through wisdom, point that thing, will what happen ultimately create in this person that realization where sa brahma yoga yuktatma, that constantly abiding in that Brahman, in that knowledge that everything is Brahman, that all objects, everything is eventually Brahman, and he is able to abide in that. Sumamakshaya mashnute. See, this one way to translate it, even in the Bhashya, he has translated like that. I mean, he has given interpretation like that. But if you take the full perspective, see, he says in the Sa Brahma Yoga Yuktatma, Brahmani Yoga Samadhihi Brahma Yoga Tena Brahma Yogena Yuktaha. The person who is absorbed in Samadhi of Brahman, a constant contemplation of Brahman. So there what happens, you are experiencing without the objects. There is no objects anymore. Like how in sleep, in sleep, there are no objects, but you are experiencing the happiness of sleep. Similarly, here what happens, that person is seeing the objects. The eyes will contact the object. He will see everything. But his mind is absorbed in the constant contemplation of Brahman, Paramatma or Atma. That everything he sees, he only experiences the joy of that self, that Atma. So, and that kind of a joy is not object-based joy. It is not a object-triggered happiness. This is a state of the mind absorbed in that Brahman. So, the first part of it is anybody can get. Like if you are disciplined, you will experience some joy. But the real point in the second line where he's mentioning, that person was absorbed in that contemplation, even when there is contact of the body and the sense of organs with that sense objects, that mind will continue to dwell on that inner joy. So here what happens, every joy he experiences is a reminder of that inner state, of that inner joy. Okay, now here he goes back to the second part, like where that what most of us now were discussing. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evacha. Now, if you don't practice like that, meaning if you don't use the objects as a means of reminder of that inner Atma, then what happens? Your mind will contact that objects and you will enjoy, you will experience a pleasure out of that. But what happens with those pleasures, that kind of a joy, then he explains. Dukkha yonaya evacha. They are ultimately, their source is suffering. Even that joy we experience from objects alone, meaning that joy which is object dependent, they are the source of them. They are founded in sorrow. They are founded in unhappiness. Why? Adhyantavanta kaunteya na teshu ramate buddha. Meaning they have a beginning and an end. The joys of object, what happens? They have a beginning and the end. But the joy of Atma or the joy of Bhagavan, they don't have a beginning and end. Why? Because this joy is where all joys have their root in. Every joy that we are seeking. So in reality, that in Kenopanishad also we discussed, that all the objects, all the things that the mind is looking through that senses, what is it seeking? It is seeking happiness. And let's say if you tell someone, this happiness is just a short-lived happiness. Why are you seeking that? That person still wants that happiness because he knows that that happiness is the pursuit of everything of life. But the only difference is the thing that is missing or lacking is that ability to gain that happiness forever. That ability to abide in that happiness is not known to that person. So even if you take animals, animals will look at anything that will give them happy. So instinctively, we are all designed like animals. We are seeking that joy. We are constantly involved in that pursuit of happiness. That is how all of our body and mind is designed for. Now, the only thing a person who has intellect does is, meaning intellect means all of us humans. What we do is that we are trying to realize that happiness which we get outwardly, it is what we want, but not in a limited way, not in a temporary way, not in a way that will end, not in a way that will give us unhappiness. See, why will those happiness give us unhappiness? So here it says, because it says it is only madhyakshana bhavitavat. It is only there for that middle, meaning in the beginning there was no happiness, in the end there is no happiness. In the middle there is that happiness. Madhyakshana, that one moment is all that we are getting that happiness. So what happens because of that? We are going, without wisdom, we will go back to that object. If there is wisdom, we will not go to that object. We will realize this happiness came from me, from that self, from that Atma Tattva. But if there is no wisdom, which people who don't have intellect or who have not exercised their intellect, like animals especially, right? We become like that. We will be addicted. We will get, like if you're watching some program, day in and day out, you will keep watching because you think that is the only way I can relax, I can feel happy, I can feel joy. So the mind will again go back. But what is happening? That slowly that happiness is diminishing. That is what they say, right? What is it called? The economy of diminishing returns. So you want more of that to try and give you that same amount of happiness, and it gives you lesser happiness. So quantity becomes more, the quality of happiness becomes less. This is the object-based happiness. Why? Because the wisdom is not there, that happiness is not coming from there. That happiness is there within me only. And then other so-called, like, we should put all those labels with their objects. With all the side effects as they put in the medicines, right? What are the other side effects? Then there is a pain of loss. Like if you are with somebody who is giving you happiness, when that person is not around you, you have grief, you have a sense of vacuum. And then there is a other irritation, a sense of restlessness. Then when that expectation, desire is not fulfilled, then it leads to anger and other things. More importantly, when we become spiritually awake, spiritually sensitive, if we are continuing to be absorbed in object-based happiness, then our inner self will start kind of warning us in many different ways. See, a person who has spiritually begun that awakening process, then the process is only one way. If there is very little joy you will find, because internally there is a certain awakening that has happened. Then you are again going seeking happiness in that objects. And what happens, that objects through senses, there is a momentum that senses are grasping again. The mind and senses, they keep grasping. But inside that intellect has awakened. It's starting to awaken. and it is trying to call us back. It is trying to tell us this will not. And then there is more grief at one point, because you realize this object is, I'm unnecessarily indulging in this. And yet we are not ready. So that is where sadhana makes a big shift, meaning taking some practice, something. That is where, that momentum, the outward going propensity, momentum of the senses, even though it knows these are not going to give me happiness, that force cannot be stopped right away, because it is like an arrow that gets shot. So how do we, and then we start feeling even worse. So in fact, many times people, like I mentioned this, people who fall into depression, negativity and all that, it is actually not in every case, but in many cases it's like that, that there is a sense of desire to progress internally, which has awakened spiritually. But outwardly, there is no path that is known, or the force of the senses is so strong that it cannot be stopped at that point, or he doesn't know ways to stop it. So then what happens? There is that deeper conflict. That conflict, in order to resolve that conflict, that person, either takes to practices or study and contemplation on all these things. And slowly, there is that healthy reconciliation. You realize that there is some time gap. I cannot overnight change also, but yet I have to make a sustained effort. There is that kind of a balance that starts awakening. Okay, so this is the Buddha, a person who is intellectual. So what do? You at least start using those moments when you are able to exercise your intellect, your mind to the great ability. And in those moments, you stop being like an animal, when those areas or those moments of your life where you have some degree of control, there you exercise it, use that buddhi, awaken that buddhi. So that is what na teshu ramate buddhehe. The wise people, they realize that. So at least in that state of wisdom, at least any hours of the day, wherever we feel wise enough, intellectual enough, we undertake practices with double zeal, with a greater zeal. We study, we contemplate, we do our sadhana. So that will reduce that force of that samskaras. That is, come in the next shloka, how that kama, krodha, their force, they are born out of that rajoguna. The rajoguna's force will get diminished by the sattva guna. Okay, any questions? Anybody else? So here, see, it is mentioned, what is often seen as a natural impulse for humans is regarded as harmful for wise sages and yogis. Almost everyone rushes to seek what is pleasant and avoid what is unpleasant. However, it is precisely these likes and dislikes that lead to inner instability. See, our buddhi, our resolution, why is it getting dislodged? Because that likes and dislikes, it is being, we are pursuing it. So cultivating mental equanimity by accepting both pleasant and unpleasant experiences is a highly beneficial practice. I will look at the Mananam next class. Okay.
Swamiji, I have a small question regarding the happiness. Just now you mentioned Swarupananda.
Yeah.
So, what's the difference of Paramananda and Swarupananda?
They are the same. So the only difference is when we say Paramananda, we are talking from the Brahman, or from that Bhagavan. So that what we say, that the joy found in Bhagavan, or find in the supreme truth, that supreme reality. So that is that highest unchangeable joy, the joy that is found in Brahman or Bhagavan, is the supreme joy. Now, Swarupananda, when we say, if the understanding is there that Atman in its nature is that Brahman only, then that Atma joy is the same as the joy of that Bhagavan's joy. Because that Atma Tattva is in us, right? So that joy which is found in that Swarupa is Atma. So here Swarupa is not just the mind, because see in the science we sometimes say, or in a meditation also we say sometimes, right? The joy is within, we are experiencing the joy within. So that kind of joy sometimes is still a intellect-based joy. So, like for example, like you meditate for half an hour and you feel a sense of peace, joy, and all that, right? So that immediate joy you feel, that that is ultimately it is that Paramananda or Swarupananda, but it is still coming as a means of a quiet and composed mind and intellect. So it is more of what we call as a sattvic ananda, or what in yoga and all that is closer to the samadhi and all that. But the Swarupananda is not through any means, through any kind of a object outward or through any practice inward. It is through that pure realization only that is found. Okay.
Swamiji, I have a question here.
Yeah, Varun.
So, when we say the extra happiness we get from external objects should be the reminder that it is a happiness coming from inside. So, the practice, whenever we get this happiness from doing something externally, the idea
Yes.
should be it is not coming from the object, rather it is the self itself which is triggering, or it is the essence of the self. So, this idea should be there.
Correct, correct. So that is a way to, in a way, purify our vision. That see the in reality from that Vedanta perspective, what it is that what is the essence of all objects? Those objects in itself are mere appearances. The base of that object is that consciousness only. So now what happens is when we say that object is getting the happiness, so in reality it is reminding of what is called as the Sat Chit Ananda, that which is the nature of of Atman and the whole substance of everything. Now, when we grasp at the appearances, it is like grasping at like a dream images, They're not real, they're gone. So even though you have a wonderful dream, you cannot go back to that dream. Maybe for one few seconds, but it is fading. Cannot grasp that joy you experienced in the dream. So, but one thing we can do, that joy that you experience there, if you realize that that is the essence, then what happens? Everything we experience, even unhappiness also in the world, we will actually think that, okay, there is an inward state of joy which is projecting all this, everything. So then the duality is coming in the world. See, the world is based on duality. There is happiness and sorrow in the world. So that happiness should be a direct reminder. Unhappiness should be a reminder also to seek that state of inner happiness. See, unhappiness also, what we do when we have something unhappy, from a worldly point, of course, we try to set right that things. So we can be happy. Like, let's say, if you, if you lose a your wallet, you go somewhere, then you go about searching, you want that wallet, then you think that if I find my wallet, everything will be back and I'll be happy again. So actually what happens is that in that loss, that grief that comes, right? What is that grief for? That grief is to get back to that state of inner peace, inner happiness. We are using this nimitta of this object, that loss of that wallet. So actually, I've somewhat digressed from your question, but yeah, so that point is correct. When you think of the outer object, that should be a reminder of that inner happiness, that inner abiding of that. Yeah, okay. All right. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namo Narayana.